Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In the Hindu fables, there is the story of mind speaking to desire. And they say to each other, let us go on a journey to find God. And mind says it will look through the 7 upper worlds, and desire will look through the 8 upper worlds, and desire will look through the 7 lower worlds. And they go about searching for God. After a period of time passes, they come back together, and neither of them found God. And so they determine there is no God. And as far as mind and desire are concerned, there is no God. As long as we stay in the state of mind and desire, we cannot find God. So this is a real help in understanding what has to happen for us to be able to become true believers and understand and see reality. As long as we are functioning in the state of the mind, and all of our perception comes from the mind, and all of our ideas come from the mind, Allah will not be found. As long as we are wrapped up in desire, and desire is where our intention stems from, we will not find God. Desire is totally self-centered. Desire is about gratifying our lower self, gratifying our own needs. Desire has to do with our egocentric existence and our egocentric existence's interface with illusion, with this world. Desire interfaces with illusion. Mind interfaces with illusion. Mind is wrapped up in creating images, and we react to these images, and all of this is an illusory situation. It's like when you go to the movies. If you look at the screen, you see this entire drama or comedy or whatever they're presenting to you, and you become enwrapped and engrossed in it, and it overtakes you, and you become totally enamored by it and totally interactive in it. Now, if you just turn around and look at the back of the theater, all of a sudden the movie disappears. It's not there anymore. All you see is the light coming from the projector. You lose touch with the illusion that was presented to you. Like that, we need to disconnect ourselves from the images and the desire driven by these images that our life is wrapped up in. And we have to learn to become real, to become something other than what's driven by mind and desire. When you're driven by mind and desire, you take on postures, you take on acts, you take on certain situations in order to try and play a role. But that role isn't necessarily real. There's a story of a dog who was begging for food, and everybody was rejecting him. And then he saw a dervish walking down the street So he ran up to the dervish, began licking his coat and begging for food. The dervish kicked him really hard and broke his leg. Now, this happened at the time of Solomon, Suleiman. And Suleiman could speak to the animals. So this dog came to Suleiman with a complaint. He says, I had my leg broken by a dervish, and I come to you in order to get some retribution. Something should be done about this. And Solomon said, well, we need to have the dervish tell us his side of the story. And the dervish came before Solomon, and he said, well, the dog was bothering me, and I kicked at it to get it away from me. And in essence, he admitted what he had done. And Solomon said to the dog, well, what should we do? Should we break his leg too in order to make it equal compensation? And the dog thought for a while. And he said, no, don't break his leg. Make him take off the cloak of the dervish because he's fooling people. I thought he was safe to go to because he was wearing this cloak, but he wasn't, because he's not a dervish. He's an imposter. And that was the judgment that Solomon gave. He made him take off the cloak of the dervish. We walk through this life being imposters. We don't know who we are. We take on acts. We take on ideas about ourselves. And none of these are true until we get to the point of true knowledge of our own being. But we are given certain touchstones that protect us while we are searching for ourselves. Because in searching for ourselves, in searching for the true reality of who we are capable of doing inappropriate things. So Allah gave us humility. He gave us being small. He gave us the ability to be kind. He gave us the Shariat to give us modes of conduct to keep us under control while we are looking for our true self. So the difference between an insan kamil and an ordinary man is that an insan kamil is beyond all of the actions that are inappropriate. They're not part of his makeup any longer. They're not part of the way he thinks or she thinks any longer. They're not involved in that kind of desire or mind action. But man, who still is under control of mind and desire, is capable of doing inappropriate things. So we've been given a whole set of laws of what we can't do. Now, Shariat, when you go through the levels of ascension, it's Shariat, Tariqat, Hakikat, Marifat, and Sufiyat. Levels of becoming real, levels of becoming appropriate, levels of entering into phases of change. And as we change, as we become closer to truth, we become more real and we become closer to knowing ourself. The Sheikh comes as an exemplar of who you are capable of being. So the Sheikh, in essence, is an exemplar of who you are at your highest level. Now, the question is, do you want to go to that level? And what will you do to go to that level. The constant instruction by the Sheikh is to become like me. So to give up the attachment to mind and desire and enter into haq, enter into reality, enter into the truth. There was a tiger who was very hungry, and he was sitting at the opening at his cave, acting as if he were very, very sick. And a goat walked by, and the goat saw that the tiger looked very ill. And the tiger said to the goat, "Yes, it's true. I'm very, very ill. You should pray for me, and you should come visit me in the future, and also go tell all your friends to come visit me." So the goat left and went and told all the other animals that the tiger was very, very sick and they should come visit him. And the first one to visit him was the goat. And the goat walked into the cave and was never heard from again. And every other animal that came to visit the tiger found the same fate. Once they went into the cave, they were never heard from again. Now, we have a tiger inside of ourselves. Hidden within us are the tigers of mind, desire, selfishness, arrogance, pride, and praise. And if we spend time with them, if we take ourselves and allow them to get control over us, we will never escape. These things are looking to devour us. These are Satan's tools, and it begins with mind and desire and selfishness. It begins with a constant, unrelenting obsession with what we believe to be ourself, and a constant, unrelenting obsession in gratifying the needs that this self has and making this self more and more important. This is the opposite of trying to find reality. This is the opposite of trying to find the truth. This is the opposite of getting to know who we are. As you walk through life, you will find some people who are kind and some people who aren't, some people who are just nasty. And it's often difficult to understand why they are that way. Well, one of the reasons they are that way is they see absolutely no benefit for themselves in being kind. They don't know what's in it for them. Well, if we are on the true path towards finding ourselves and finding our Lord, then we realize that there is a unity within existence. And this obsession with the self and the egocentric nature of the self and the constant attempt to fulfill the desires of the self is contrary to the understanding of the unity of all existence. And if we are constantly trying to make ourselves bigger, grab for ourselves, supply for ourselves, we are pushing ourselves away from Allah. We are pushing ourselves away from the truth, and we are entering into the tiger's cave, and there's no escape. Once you go into that cave, you're finished. So we have to try desperately, in order to save our existence, to remove ourselves from these qualities that only have to do with ourself. It should be easy to understand the difference between universal qualities, godly qualities, and selfish qualities. And it should be easy for us to recognize the difference. And we need to recognize the difference. There was a group of people who had a guru, and they were all vegetarians. And they talked about their purity because they didn't eat meat, and how this elevated them above other people. And one of them came to the guru, and he was married, and he told the guru he wanted to have an affair with such and such a woman, and he wanted the guru's permission. And the guru said to him, you know how you don't eat meat, you call yourself a vegetarian? Well, you should also become a vegetarian lover. Stay away from the meat. Learn to interact at a different level. In the same way that you stay away from eating meat, you should stay away from loving meat. And when that's understood, then you can get to another level, because again, it talks about what's permitted and what's not permitted, but it was explained in such a unique way that it became apparent to the person what was being talked about. We need to be able to accept the fact that our actions in this world have to be limited. Our actions in this world have to be controlled. We can't just do whatever we want. We can't just say whatever we want. The path of understanding God's qualities and incorporating God's qualities is a lifetime job. The progress that we make is never at an end. Until we get to the point where we have transcended our existence and transcended all of our personal needs, we still have further to go. And we should understand that as long as we are within this body, we are still students, we are still learning, and we still have further to go. Our sheikh would always say that he is still a student. There's always more to learn. And we have to take on that attitude. We have to take on that understanding that our progress doesn't stop, that we have further and further to go. On the road to infinity, there are an infinite number of thresholds to cross. Each one of them calls you home. Each one of them beckons you to call it home. If you stay, you will change from a pilgrim to a defender of thresholds. So once you stop, you're finished at whatever spot you stopped on. A pilgrim's progress never ends. A pilgrim's progress is ongoing, ongoing, and ongoing towards reality, towards his Lord. So what happens in this world is so many people have stopped. They've stopped at religion. They've stopped at atheism. They've stopped at wealth. They've stopped at fame. They've stopped at one of these intermediate things that happens to people. Can you be involved in fame and then realize that there's nothing to it? Can you be involved in wealth and then realize that there's nothing to it? Or do you keep chasing that same circle over and over and over? One of Satan's great lies, when you find that you are unhappy with something, is he just whispers in your ear, it's because you don't have enough of it. If you had more, you would become satisfied. So if your obsession is money and all of a sudden you've come into a lot of money, but you still don't find yourself to be satisfied, Satan says you need more money. If your obsession is fame and all of a sudden you become famous, but it doesn't seem to satisfy you, Satan says you need more fame. And on and on and on in each aspect of this illusory world, in each aspect of what you can have in this illusory world. That's why we have renunciates. That's why we have people who run away to monasteries to denounce the world. However, do you really believe that once they've gotten to the monastery, they've left themselves behind? Wherever they go, they bring themselves. Wherever we go, we bring ourselves. So what happens is the nature of what goes on within the circle that you're in may change, but the essence of what goes on remains the same unless you give up the obsession with the self. So people can fight about when they're in a closed situation with a teacher, who'll be closer to the teacher, who's more important to the teacher, who gets the most important duties to do for the teacher, who does the teacher like the best. All of these things become critical to those people as opposed to just disappearing. Disappearing is a very difficult thing to do until you become cognizant of the fact that the only solution to all of your problems, the only solution to all of your dilemmas, the only solution to all of the difficulties and sorrows and dramas that you have in the world is to let go of all of them, to disappear from all of them, to take on a persona that is inert to all of those things. And what does inert mean? It means not attracted by. So when the magnetism of element towards element in this world happens, you are relieved of it because you've learned how to detach yourself from it. A magnet pulls steel or metal towards, or iron towards itself. We are attracted to the other elements in the world. There's an attraction between men and women. There's attraction between men and all of the elemental forces. We need to somehow gain control of that attraction and shift it so that our desire and our needs change. There are millions of different desires in the world, but there's only one desire that has a cure, and that's the desire to know Allah. So we have to begin to understand that this chasing that we do in the world is not going to get us anywhere. It's like the dog that chases the car, and you've all seen dogs chase cars. But when the car stops, what's the dog do? Finds another car to chase. There's no solution. There's no end. There's no satisfaction. The only way we will find satisfaction is to change the way we do things. Ali was asked by the Prophet, you love God, you love me, you love Fatima, you love Hussein and Hassan. How do you love all of these different things? And Ali thought about it and he said, let me think about it before I answer you. And he went back and he talked to his wife, Fatima. And he said, the Prophet asked me, how do I love all these different things? And Fatima smiled at him and said, this is an easy question. You love your Lord as a servant. You love your Prophet as a disciple. You love me as your wife. And you love Hassan and Hussein as a father. These are all different kinds of love. But you have to be able to love with your soul. You can't love with your flesh. There's a difference in the type of love that goes on when you love with your soul. And this was the answer. We are involved in many different kinds of love in our life, but we constantly have to love from the place where Allah exists. And the place where Allah exists is in our soul. So when we love others, when we love anything in this existence, we have to love from that place. And then our love becomes real. Then our love becomes transcendent. And then our love can become unconditional without expectation. And this is one of the really important lessons that we have to learn. We have to understand that expectations cause us much of our sorrow. Expectations cause us much of our difficulty in this life. As we go through and expect things in our existence, when we don't get what we want, we have a reaction to what we haven't achieved. We get a reaction to what we haven't accomplished. And that reaction is going to bring about sadness, sorrow, because of something we don't have. But if we didn't expect it, if we don't need it, if we've learned about gratitude and we are satisfied with what we have, we begin to change internally. Once gratitude becomes part of who we are, our interaction with the world changes. A lion who's eaten is not the same as a lion who's hungry. And the difference is self-evident. Well, it's like that with us. As long as we are in a state of unfulfilled desire, we are like a hungry lion. We're on the prowl. We're constantly on the loose, looking for something to satisfy our hunger. Well, this hunger can't be satisfied. Desire never ends. The desire for the world is a constant, unstoppable force that exists within each and every one of us. And as long as we are spending our lives trying to fulfill that desire, contentment will not come. Peace will not come. So we have to learn to be satisfied. We have to learn to do what it is we have to do and leave the results to Allah. And whatever the results are, we are satisfied with. So that doesn't mean don't work. It means work. It means work hard, but don't expect more than you get. And whatever you get, be satisfied. When you're eating and you're across from somebody else, you don't look at their plate, you look at your plate and you eat what's on your plate. And if you need what's on the other person's plate, you're creating a problem for yourself. We need to put ourselves in a position of contentment. When we pray, we should pray that we become grateful for what it is that we have. We should pray that we become content with what we have. We should pray that we become peaceful with what we have. This constant striving, that's the nature of the world, doesn't necessarily get us anywhere. It doesn't help to have these excessive needs. Excessive needs lead to sorrow and lead to difficulty and lead to conflict. We need to simplify our existence. We need to make it easier on ourselves to focus on truth and to focus on reality. Focus on finding ourselves and finding out the truth of who we are. And if we are so busy focusing on the illusory world and focusing on the elemental world, we don't have time to find out the truth about ourselves. So there has to come a time within our existence when we become mature enough to understand that that which is external to us, all of the elemental world that is external to us, is not where we're going to find the solution to our dilemma. It's going to be found inside of ourselves. And we have to turn inside of ourselves to find those answers. We have to be able to sit still and be peaceful. We have to be able to sit still and be grateful. We have to be able to sit still and be free of the constant temptation that desire is placing in front of us. And this takes discipline. This takes discipline in our life. This takes a certain certitude of what the truth in essence is. And it takes faith in what we cannot see. We are told that we are to believe in the angels. We are to believe in the resurrection. We are to believe in the qualities of God, and we are to believe in God. None of these things do we see. None of these things can we hold on to, and none of these things can be understood by our mind and our senses the way they are. They are beyond our comprehension in this way, but we need to have faith that's strong enough that it can comprehend the reality that the scriptures tell us about, that the sheikhs tell us about, that the prophets tell us about, and we have to hold that dear and close to us. And the stronger we believe in that reality, the more we are going to become a true human being. We can't be a true human being without a strong belief, a strong faith in all of the things that God has set down and told us about, even though we can't see them, even though we can't touch them. The time will come when that will be exposed to you. The time will come when you can see reality, even though you can't see it now. When we were with the Sheikh, you could see the manifestation of reality in man's form. That kindness, that generosity, that overwhelming peace and love. And each of us are capable of entering into that place of overwhelming generosity, overwhelming peace, and overwhelming love. That is who we can become. That is who we should become. That is what we were meant to become. That is the intention that set out the creation. Allah created us to know him and for him to know us. And the only way that we can know him is to become like him. So his qualities, his gracious nature has to become our quality and our gracious nature. We have to become gracious. We have to become kind. We have to become grateful. We have to become merciful. We have to become compassionate. We have to become bigger than we are. And we have to disappear from this idea of what the self is. And when that disappearance occurs, when the mind and desire disappear, wisdom enters. And when wisdom enters, we'll be able to see reality and understand reality and touch reality, because the elemental world will no longer have a fascination for us, because we can see through it. We can see the truth of it, and we can see that it is a temporary manifestation that will disappear. But there is something that it doesn't disappear. There is something that is eternal. We can't see what's eternal, but we know in our feeling what it's like. Anybody who's ever felt love knows how powerful love can be, even though you can't see it. Anyone who's ever felt gratitude knows how powerful it is, even though you can't see it. All of God's qualities are like that. They are powerful beyond imagination. So what we should understand is the unseen is stronger than the seen. The unseen is eternal. That which we see is temporary and disappears. So we need to focus our life on the eternal. We need to focus our life on the unseen. We have to desire the unseen, not that which is seen. And when that happens, a major change occurs within us, and our attitude towards existence and our interaction with existence changes entirely. May it come to be that all of us understand truth, understand the nature of our Lord, and understand the true nature of who we are, so that we can come to know ourselves, and in knowing ourselves, know our Lord. Ameen, Ameen, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.